Jackson's water treatment plants even worse. State Health Officer Daniel Edney.
The water is not safe to drink, and I would even say it's not safe to brush your teeth with because we are not seeing adequate coordination and inability to consistently disinfect the water.
The Netherlands is expressing concern about the gun violence in the U.S. after a shooting in Indianapolis over the weekend that killed one Dutch soldier and wounded two. The soldiers were training in the U.S. The Dutch defense minister says this is very, very concerning. President Biden is thanking two veterans groups that have been helping Afghans who fled their country. The AP's Ben Thomas.
The president spoke to the leaders of #AfghanEvac and honor the promise to express his appreciation for those groups' work resettling Afghan allies in the United States. The White House says Americans of all stripes have welcomed nearly 90,000 Afghans to the U.S. over the past year. It was a year ago the U.S. ended the 20-year war in Afghanistan, and the final weeks were chaotic as the U.S.-backed Afghan government collapsed.
European Union ministers are debating ways to help Ukraine even more. They're talking about boosting weapons production, more military training for the Ukrainian armed forces. United Nations and Pakistan are about to ask for $160 million in emergency funds for nearly 500,000 displaced victims of record-breaking floods in Pakistan. Former classmates say the 20-year-old who opened fire in Bend, Oregon in a supermarket, killing two before he killed himself, was a loner, known for getting into fights in high school. This is AP News. California lawmakers have approved the landmark fast food workers bill. The AP's Mike Gracia has this story.
Acting over objections of restaurant owners who warned of associated higher costs for consumers, the California State Senate advanced a measure Monday that would give more than 500,000 fast food workers in the Golden State more protections. The bill would create a new 10-member fast food council that would be empowered to set minimum standards for wages, hours, and working conditions in California. The council would include 4 workers' delegates, 4 employers' representatives, and 2 state officials. The measure now goes to the California Assembly, which adjourns on Wednesday. I'm Mike Gracia.
Serena Williams has won her match in the first round of the U.S. Open. Serena Williams beat Danka Kovinic 6-3, 6-3 under the lights in Arthur Ashe Stadium. She turns 41 next month. I'm Rita Foley, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 Chicago traffic update.
On the Indiana Toll Road eastbound, we are seeing some reduced speeds in Portage, and the traffic is diverted off the toll road, the area between State Road 49 and 421 at Michigan City. The crash which happened about 1:30 this morning. Traffic exits at the truck rest area, then can re-enter. Eastbound 8094 at the entrance for Furthers crash, ramp still open. We've seen delays on the inbound Stevenson Expressway, Harlem to Kedzie. An outbound crash in Pulaski cleared.
All right, the Reverend is on.
Thank you. Hi, how you doing?
I'm great, Santita. How are you?
Great hearing your voice.
Likewise.
Great hearing your voice, son. Great hearing your voice.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to
Story I was looking for confirmation.
And stream the Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
The takedown.
Can you stay with me just a little longer? You know what I want to do? Dr. Knighton is not going to be here today. But I wanted to, public education is underfunded by $150 billion. And we have a shortage of 300,000 teachers.
45 seconds.
And a lot of things are going on. And so I want to
Arizona to not accept the electoral count and to certify fake votes. That's Ginny Thomas. She is a freaking traitor.
I want to
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to pull something down. Give me just continue to play the music until I get this printed. Thank you so much.
And then, so don't call Dr. Knighton?
No, don't call Dr. Knighton. I apologize. Yep.
No, it's all good.
She needs to be removed from government.
All right, 10 seconds.
Hear more from Cliff at heartlandsignal.com and subscribe to his YouTube page.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
It's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am dreaming.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Yes, that's my printer you hear in the background. I'm pulling down stories for you on the Santita Jackson Show. Tuesday, August 30th, 2022. Where did the summer go, you guys? I mean, I know it's still technically summer, but you know we're about to go into the Labor Day weekend, which means that summer is coming to a close. Did you have a good summer? Did you? I had a good one and an eventful one. So I hope that you had a great summer. Let's move into the fall and let's keep this thing moving. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio. My brothers and sisters to the north, Matt Sowell over there at AM 950 radio. He's one of our early morning stars, sending him much love today. And then, of course, Chad Larson and all of my family up there at AM 950 radio. So grateful for you. And of course, and Matt and Mark and Melissa and Antonio and Steve and all the folks here at WCPT. There's so many folks. And I am going to be coming on to some other stations, so we'll be talking about that as well. But right now, let's talk about education today. We're going to devote the show to that. Did you know that American public schools are underfunded by $150 billion? Now we've got 300,000 teachers and paraprofessionals who are not in the system. Those jobs are unfilled, at least 2,000 in the state of Illinois, for example. Minnesota is they pay their teachers. They are one among the top 10 states that pay their teachers the least. Do we value education? No, we don't. If we did, we do value it for the elite among us. They don't have this problem. But the people, the masses of people, that is a problem. You know, we just found out that we just gave more money to Ukraine, but now we can't get COVID tests. There's a lot going on here. We have to talk about that. We have to talk about why teachers make 23 to 32% less than other college graduates. You know, the smartest person in the class, if you expect them to go into medicine or to law or one of these professions where you can make some money, go on to Wall Street. If you go into teaching, people look at you like you're crazy. And that's an awful thing. So we've got to talk about that today. Did you know that? And we talked about this when I first came on there in 2019, the fight for literacy in Detroit. There was a class action lawsuit against the Detroit public schools by the students. They said, we have a right to be literate. And of course, I remember Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., when he was in Congress, constructed an amendment to the Constitution guaranteeing equal access to equal high quality education for every American child, because that is not your constitutional right. Essentially, you do not have a right to literacy. How else are you going to get literate unless you go to school? So we got to talk about that today. And I want you to call me at 763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And I want you to meet up with my morning stars, Dave Dowling. Andre got there first today, Dave, and Louie Chewy and Paula. She's one of the original mining stars. Yes. And Jewel from New York, and Mark and Tony, and sending you a Barbara Bacon out there in Oak Park. Sending you much love, everybody. Please like and share the show. Like and share the show. Meet us on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and on Santita Jackson and Friends. So in Chicago, it's going to be a beautiful day. 81 degrees will be our high. It will be mostly sunny after that storm yesterday. Oof. And then 80 degrees in Minneapolis, St. Paul, sunny. The Dow closed down 184 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 124 points. S&P 500 closed down 27. And in Major League Baseball, the Royals will be playing the White Sox right here in Chicago. The Twins bested the Red Sox 4-1 4-2. And the Blue Jays, well, they got our Cups 5-4, everybody. And speaking of Major League Baseball, Major League Baseball labor advocates yesterday cheered as a union representing Major League Baseball players launched a drive to unionize their minor league counterparts. Good for them. They endure grueling working conditions, often for near poverty wages, for a roughly 1 in 10 shot at making it to the major leagues. Indeed, that is something President Hugo Chavez of Venezuela fought. He fought for his players because, of course, that is a heavily recruited country, to have guaranteed monies. He said everybody's not going to make it to the major leagues, but the farm teams, they make money for the major leagues and they farm you into the major leagues. So I want to make sure that when my guys come back, they have some money. Think about that. By the way, the major league owners hated him for that. Can you imagine? Pshaw. Everybody praying for our brothers and sisters in Jackson, Mississippi. The governor of Mississippi said he will declare a state of emergency for the capital, Jackson, Mississippi, the state's largest city, after its main water treatment facility failed yesterday, leaving residents without enough water to flush toilets or fight fires. Wow. State authorities are now scrambling to begin distributing water to 180,000 residents, according to the Governor Tate Reeves, who celebrates Confederate Heritage Day, by the way. He said, quote, "Please stay safe. Do not drink the water," close quote. The state is expected to call in the National Guard to help distribute drinking and non-drinking water as crews work to get the treatment plant back online. The U.S. government faces a deadline today to respond in writing to former President Donald Trump's request for a special master to oversee the FBI's review of evidence seized at his Mar-a-Lago residence. A special master is a third-party attorney appointed by a court to oversee part of a certain case. A federal judge has signaled, quote, "a preliminary intent," close quote, to grant the request, which could bring new complications to the DOJ's closely watched investigation into this matter. The U.S. has assessed that Russia is now in possession of weapons capable Iranian drones that will likely deploy on the battlefield in Ukraine. They're having a real fight, everybody, a real fight there. Investigators are working to determine the motive of the 20-year-old shooter who killed 2 people at an Oregon grocery store on Sunday night. Police responded to the Safeway in Bend, Oregon, within minutes after receiving 911 calls about an active shooting. Authorities said the shooter entered the shopping center wielding an AR-15 style rifle and a shotgun and began firing in the parking lot before entering the grocery store. More than 11 years after Japan's worst nuclear disaster, the town that hosts the disabled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant lifted its evacuation order today, allowing former residents to return homes. The town of Futaba, previously deemed off limits, is the last of 11 districts to lift its evacuation order, everybody. And of course, Artemis, the twin sister of Apollo. That is the new space mission to Mars. They're going to end up at Mars, but they're going to start at the moon. Well, it was postponed until Friday, so we'll be looking at that. And then Madam C.J. Walker, America's first female self-made millionaire, Black woman, is now a Barbie doll. And guess what, everybody? It's a watershed moment. California Senate passed historic bill to empower fast food workers. Yay! And days after approving another $3 billion for the Ukraine war, the U.S. says there's no more money for free COVID tests. What do you think about that? Call me at 773. I want to hear what your thoughts are about that. Because how are you going to find out? That means you're going to have to spend money for these COVID tests. And they keep giving money to Ukraine. I want to help everybody I can, but honestly, Pastor Stephen Thurston, you got to take care of home first. It's not even charity. Parity begins at home. I mean, what are we doing? No COVID tests?
That's correct.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Nobody's feeling that. I mean, look, and if y'all are going to be at war with each other and bumping up against borders, you all need to figure that out. That's why you need to negotiate this, because we can't afford this. Because the government has essentially told us we're in a pandemic still, everybody, which is why Dr. Knighton and Dr. Holden and these other physicians have been on this show every day. Dr. Knighton will not be here today, but she will be back tomorrow to talk about this multi-system failure. We're praying for her, Pastor Thurston, because her great nephew, who will be 3 on Friday, he had taken an antibiotic. He wasn't quite, she said after about 3 days, she's not getting any better. And of course, she's a PhD. She's Dr. Knighton. She took him in. It turns out his whole systems, all his body was failing. Thank God she was there. And it's happening to a lot of our children. This multi-system failure. Like, we have a lot of strange things going, like a sudden adult death syndrome. I'm like, we've gone from SIDS to adults dropping dead. How is that happening? Well, so we're praying for her great nephew and her family. She'll be back, but her great nephew is making improvements, everybody, every day, just so that you know. So everybody like and share, but no more money for COVID tests in the United States of America. But $3 billion to Ukraine. Yeah, I'm cranky about that. I am. I want to help everybody I can, but come on. Pastor Thurston, what's the good news?
Yes, ma'am. We need some. The good news I want to share with Dave is that we can deconstruct some of the shame that exists in our life. Does this sound familiar? I don't deserve to be happy. I'll never be good enough. I'm not worthy of love. Sounds like something we've either heard from others, or maybe, if we're honest, we've communicated these things ourselves at various times in our lives. As a pastor, Santita, I hear phrases like this all the time as I seek to help individuals walk through the various chapters of their life. And I've walked through a lot of broken stories from numerous aching souls over these past 21 years. And these experiences have led me to a conclusion that the aforementioned phrases boil down to one emotion, that emotion being shame. Whether your story includes a destructive marriage, multiple miscarriages, cancer diagnosis, suicide attempts, or divorce, there are various circumstances in life that can bring us to the thought, we better get the lie that we're not enough, that we deserve abuse, that we deserve pain and grief, that we deserve every bad experience that has happened and will happen along this journey called life. The sad part is that humans are very good at gathering shame inside of the body, from lives filled with trauma and abuse to internalized feelings of unworthiness from shaming messages received from parents or teachers or peers in our formative years. We've been conditioned to perceive things through a shame filter. And when we view ourselves through such a filter, we end up living in a constant state of fight or flight, which is very harmful to our bodies. And that's why you might notice that you tend to isolate or disconnect and hide from people. That's your way of creating a protective insulation. Santita, I recall as a kid going through this spell of believing that monsters were hiding out in my room at night, waiting to come out as soon as my parents would shut the door after tucking me in. And finally, after addressing this with my parents, hey, as the monster here, you got to leave a night light on, leave the door open, let me sleep in your room, everything I could do to try to find shelter from these monsters that were hiding in my room. Finally, my mother decided to have a conversation with me. And she said, look, if you see a monster, it's coming to you for a reason. So the next time you see it, instead of being scared, here's what I want you to do. I want you to welcome it. I want you to say, hey, monster, what's up? And invite the monster into a conversation as your new friend. And listen, after she gave me that assignment, I couldn't wait for the next time that the monster would appear. So I started staying up at night in hopes of meeting this monster so I could try out this tactic that my mom had proposed to me. So for the next couple of weeks, I did my best to stay up at night so that I could engage the monster. But here's the thing. I kept falling asleep. I could never stay up through the night and meet the monster. And the thing is, I wasn't able to stay up through the night and would end up going to sleep because I was no longer scared. Combating shame is a lot like that. It starts with pulling back the curtain and getting real with shame. And when you bring it out in the open, it actually loses its power over you. When you bring it into the light and you begin to deconstruct it and reconstruct your story, and then you find yourself reemerging. And the good news is that transformation occurs when you confront the limiting beliefs that you've built about yourself and the identities that others have given to you. You can break free from shame, and you can leverage the losses that you've taken in life to empower others. But first, you got to own your power, and that starts with shifting your mindset. And so somebody's saying, well, Stephen, how do I do that? That's a great question. So glad you asked. Here's what you do. Start taking inventory of your life and begin practicing gratitude. The power of choice is what distinguishes us from any other creature that God has created. At any moment, we can choose joy, love, or gratitude, or we can go the opposite route. We can choose anger, resentment, and powerlessness. Your transformation out of shame will be the result of not just gratitude, which is very important, but shifting mentally, understanding your emotions, and changing some of your habits. Listen, I need you, here's your assignment today. I need you to work towards giving up the story of not being enough. Listen, you are enough. You're more than enough, actually. You have to bring your shame to light. Dark room can't remain dark when a bright light shows up. And I get it. It's scary bringing shame to light. But the minute you do, you'll step forward into a newfound freedom. You'll learn that you don't fit the identities others have framed for you. You fully become yourself, the worthy, deserving, more than enough creation that God created you to be. Listen, today's the day that we begin deconstructing the shame that exists in our lives.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Because there's so many, there's just so much negativity that we carry around with us all day, every day. And I know I am so guilty of that. And and I am naturally very upbeat. You know, the glass to me is always half full. It's always half full. Yep. There's the sun is shining somewhere all the time. But I've been around some relatives, quite frankly, who always catch the flaw. And there is an upside to that, but that's not my natural inclination. I can see the flaw, but I'm not going to let the flaw stop me. And so, you know what I mean? So I've had to step away and say, no, I don't think that way. I don't. Failure never even occurred to me. I said that to someone once. I said, I didn't even think about that. I'd never even calculated that. Well, you should have. No. Not going to do that. Because if I'm going to incline myself toward that, and I don't want to do that. Let me ask you this. Exactly. Let me ask you this. Are you going to have your Facebook talk today?
Yes, 3:00 Central Standard Time on my Facebook page. You can just put my name in, Stephen, with the PH, Stephen Thurston. You'll find me there. I'm talking about mishandling mentorship today. So many people seek mentors in life, and then we end up messing up. I want to give some clues because I've been on the side of a mentor and a mentee. I just want to share some life experiences that might help you to better handle the people that God sends to your life to grow you, develop you, and change you to be all that you've been created to be.
Well, which leads me into this discussion that we're having today about education. I mean, now our young people, our children, and some of our adults are going back to school. It's always wonderful when you see these commercials where you see adults who are saying, you know what? I want to finish. I want to get my GED. I get my degree. I want to sharpen this skill. I mean, it's always very inspiring. I mean, my grandmother got her degree at 61, and she was just hungry for it after she'd gotten her kids through school. And she was orphaned when she was like 12, so she was out here. But she always wanted to press toward that mark and got her master's at 65. That having been said, my question as we look at these. You are in Roseland, which is it's a community that's bifurcated now. It's a struggling working class community. A lot of proud, wonderful people, but it's been an economically depressed community. But it's also now a gentrifying community. I went out there with my mother just a couple of months ago, and I was shocked to see these restored mansions and homes. I said, okay, so these black folks who are out here are about to get pushed out, really, because of gentrification, and you're seeing it. But you still serve the heart of that community. And education, whenever we do shows on education, it's hard to get off of them. That's why I had to revisit this today, because people really want so much for if not for themselves, for their children. They want for their children. What do we do right now? I mean, because now, Stephen, when we were in college, if someone said they wanted to be a teacher, you'd kind of look at them and go, oh, that's nice. Oh, but implicit in that was you're not going to make any money. Oh, so-and-so's going to be a doctor, so-and-so's going to be a lawyer, so-and-so's going to be a big preacher. We know Steve's father got a big
the system is going to fail us, which it has been doing, then we have to take responsibility as a community, gather our resources that we have, pull together and say, hey, let's do what we need to do to level up our students, our young people, so that they're equipped with the basics and the fundamentals to make it through life. It's on us. It's on parents. It's on churches. It's on community organizations to pool our resources, put some things in place to help our young people so that they can succeed in life.
And I think we need to follow Dr. King's example, Reverend Jackson's example, and take the ministry, take the church, take the walls off the church. We need to march on state capitals, and we need to march on Washington. Number one, we need an education amendment. We need equal access to equal high-quality education. That came from Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. We need that right now. We need it. You don't have a constitutional right. Anytime the kids in Detroit are suing, Pastor, fighting for the right to be literate. That's what they said. We are suing for the fight to be, if we're suing for the right to have literacy. I said, wait a minute, in the United States? And I talked about this with some Detroit figures 3 years ago when I started here. And while the New York Times and the court said, you know what, they have the right to be literate, guess what? It didn't quite happen that way. The case was settled out of court, Reverend Thurston. Do you have a right to be literate? Can we afford to have 300,000 teachers and para-professionals out of the system? Come on, you guys. Can we afford to underfund the system? Come on now. You're going to come up with $3 billion for Ukraine and I can't get a COVID test? Back to more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Ugh. Oh, and get this, the education secretary, and it's true, it came from an EPI study.
For news, opinion, and
the average
insight.
teacher's pay is only up $29 over the past 25 years, Stephen.
It's insane.
This is Congressman Mike Quigley.
I mean,
We have our priorities so jacked up.
it's and you know what? And it's playing itself out. And you got these kids walking into stores, walking into public spaces and places because they essentially don't feel good about themselves. Doesn't give you the right to kill anybody, but that's what they're doing.
Right.
Must act.
Yes.
Rights
Get them in the root cause analysis.
All these, thank you, all these idle minds out here. I'm like,
and it doesn't end with abortion rights. Gun violence.
so all you
is
can come up with is a gun? Have you read a book?
The Highland Park
Can you
shooter
read a
should
book?
not have been able to purchase a weapon of war. Period.
I mean, and I'm not trying to clown anyone because that's not. Look, my great grandmother couldn't read. And she fought so hard and pushed my father to become somebody. Do you know we had to beg her to go vote for him? Because if she went to the polling place with all the press, even if the press hadn't been there, but of course he was the candidate, so
because
facts
matter.
This was a big deal. She would have to admit to the world that she couldn't write her name.
Yeah.
You're listening to
And
WCPT 820.
They were delayed by more than an hour. Well, actually, my father had been trying to convince her for months, but she refused. She finally relented. But literally, it's like they were more than an hour late to the polls. But now, the day that I was born, she took out an insurance policy, excuse me, for me to go to college. That's how much she valued education.
Yeah.
And that's not unique. And she worked for Mrs. Marshall as her maid and paid for it. I was contacted just a couple of years ago. I haven't touched it yet. I was contacted by the insurance company, rather my father was. They said, we came across this. You have a daughter named Santita? Yes. Mrs. Matilda Burns started the policy firm, and it hasn't been touched. As God would have it, Stephen, I didn't even need it. Oof.
Yes, ma'am. With the sacrifices I answered.
Oh my gosh. Come on. You know,
And we're so apathetic about opportunity.
but you know, that's why we have to give people the information, Pastor
Ms.
Thurston.
Jackson.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson, Chaparral, Kurt, and Brandon are up.
Okay, fantastic. Well, you can stay as long as you like, but I wanted you to at least say hello to them, Pastor Thurston. You know Commissioner Brandon Johnson, of course. Commissioner Johnson, this is, Pastor Stephen Thurston.
How are you?
Good morning, Pastor Thurston. I'm well. How are you?
Excellent, sir.
Do you all know each other? You should. If you don't, you should.
Pass.
Okay.
So there for you. He did the presentation.
Okay, because you should know each other. And then, of course, we got Kurt Hilgendorf, who is about to go on daddy duty, so we had to grab him before. He had to devote this time to getting this baby together to go out today. Thank you so much, Mr. Hilgendorf.
And that's why we did something about it.
Hey, good morning, Santita. Thanks for having me on.
Wonderful. And of course, he's a legislative and policy director for the Teachers Union. And Pastor Thurston is the teaching pastor at Salem, at the House of Hope. So, and of course, his family church is New Covenant. Pastor Stephen Thurston, his father, is the pastor there, as was his grandfather and great-grandfather. So they've been my family in ministry for. His grandfather was one of my fathers in the ministry 60 years ago. Wow, Stephen.
And together, we can make a difference.
And then, of course, you've got. Oh, yeah, but you all should know each other. You should know each other.
10 seconds.
My grandfather and father is the same, but those were non-union positions, Santita, so my sister took over the church. God bless her.
Oh, God help him.
Can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am free.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Talking about education today. What are we going to do to save the public schools, to save our children, to save the teachers, to save everybody in the ecosystem, the paraprofessionals? Remember your lunch lady in your school who might give you some extra fries? Or what about that lunch lady or the gentleman who worked in the lunch room who knew you didn't have some money, who's going to make sure you ate? These are our stories out here, everybody. And these people are in peril. 300,000 teachers and teaching positions and positions in the education ecosystem are vacant right now. What will the classrooms look like? What will the schools look like? We've got 2,000 of those positions in Illinois alone, at least. So what does the school look like? What are we sending our children back to? And what are we condemning our teachers to? They make 23 to 32% less than other college graduates. Why? Why? Why are U.S. schools underfunded by nearly $150 billion? And we look and give money to Ukraine and others without even thinking about it. They get their money, as my mother says, off the top. I am all about helping people, but the first thing you've got to do is secure the United States of America. And that is not what we're doing. It's not what we're doing. So let's talk about it. I want you to call me, Marilyn Phillips and Santita. I'd say call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Hey, Marilyn, why don't you call in? I'm going to go back and try and bring some of these comments in, but it's very challenging to read the comments and try to keep these interviews and this information on track. So I want you all to call me. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. But first, of course, got to get my food I've got to call you to get my order in. Chaparral, celebrations by us. Oh, yes, and I'm going to get an order in for the holiday. Thank you very much. Yes, I am. Chaparral.
Yes, Santita, we are still taking some Labor Day orders, so please call us today if you want something for the weekend. We're going to take them up to Wednesday of this week, so call us at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. Celebrations by us. We are your one-stop party connection. Not only can we do your food, but we can do also your decor, as well as also your balloon arches, sweet tables, as well as also your custom treats. So give us a call at 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you, and thank you so much, Santita.
Okay, just very quickly, what can we order for Labor Day?
Well, I have orders already for jerk chicken, barbecue ribs, baked beans, spaghetti, potato salad. So that's what we'll be making this weekend if you want to get in on that order.
Thank you. Thank you for the ideas. Of course, we've been talking with Pastor Stephen Thurston as he gave us the good news and really weighed in on what the Salem Baptist Church, Pastor James Meeks is the founder. Of course, he's going to be retiring, but, and First Lady Jamel Meeks, we just love them so much and appreciate their service to the community. To the Roseland community, to Chicago, to the state of Illinois, indeed, for all of Christendom. They have done so much magnificent work, and they deserve to be able to continue to grow and flourish beyond the walls of Salem, giving them so much love. And of course, Pastor Thurston is their teaching pastor. He comes out of New Covenant, which is that historic church founded so many years ago by his great-granddad, his grandfather, now his father, and soon he will be there. And so God bless them. Hey, everybody, it's Tuesday, August 30th, 2022. Let's talk about what's happening in our schools. We were kind of shocked when we heard that 300,000 teachers and teaching assistants and paraprofessionals would not be in the schools this year. So what does that mean? What will the schools look like? Well, we've got a lot going on, everybody. We find that teachers, many, all from state to state to state, are looking at leaving the profession. They're like, I'm not being respected. Money is not at the top of that list. It's the disrespect, not just from parents. Yes, parents have been disrespectful, but it's the disrespect for the profession. Is it because it's a lot of women in the profession? Of course. Is it because it's a soft profession? Of course. Is it a necessary profession? Absolutely. You would not be able to do anything if you didn't know how to read. But we underfund by $150 billion annually K through 12 public schools, by $150 billion annually. And the education secretary was on Meet the Press, and Miguel Cardona came up with a stunning fact that people had to fact check, and they found that it was true according to the Economic Policy Institute study. The average teacher's pay is only up $29 over 25 years. Let's talk about this, everybody. Let's talk about this, of course, with Cook County Commissioner, Illinois Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson, who has been a public school teacher. And now he's in this space where he looks at the money. Our Cook County board they dispense the money to the city of Chicago and to every state. One about this, of course, Kurt Hilgendorf. So glad that you're with us today, Legislative and Policy Director for the Chicago Teachers Union. Let me start with you, Kurt. $150 billion underfunding of K through 12 programs, public schools in the United States. How can that be? I mean, how does the education system make it when it's underfunded? I mean, just out the gates.
I mean, this is the same profession that requires the teachers to spend, $1,000 plus out of their own pocket every year to make sure there are school supplies so that when kids come back to school every year. And I think that speaks volumes about, about your point about the profession, about the people who work in the profession, and the amount of support there is across the country for something that is, basically the core piece of government that touches more people than any other piece of government in the country. That's public schools. There's been obviously been an intentional effort to try to defund and attack public schools when it comes to, trying to overturn the curriculum. You talked about teachers feeling, unrespected. That's part of this. But I think that ultimately it comes down to the amount of effort that the country collectively has put towards funding schools. And there are schools that have never recovered from the 2008 and 2009 economic crash that are still basically in the same position they were in now, more than a decade later, or in worse shape. And I think that's been the challenge, is that there hasn't been the care and the effort put forth to making sure that those parts of our society that touch the most people, public schools, that have some of the greatest collective impact, to make sure that they are cared for, nurtured, and protected.
Have things worsened, Kurt Hilgendorf? Of course, he is the Legislative and Policy Director for the Chicago Teachers Union. Have things worsened? I mean, because we just got an education department. Of course, Dr. Mary Frances Berry was tasked by President Jimmy Carter to create a Department of Education. Now, he didn't select her to be the secretary, but she constructed it. First Black president of a major white university, the University of Denver. Brilliant, brilliant woman. And brilliant author, brilliant historian. She ended up becoming the head of the EEOC. But that having been said, next to the Department of Homeland Security, this was the last cabinet level department created. I mean, to me, that says something about how we value or do not value education. There is no guarantee no protection and no guarantee in the Constitution that you should receive it. You've got the children in Detroit suing the Detroit public schools for literacy. They say we have a right to be literate. I mean, this is crazy, Kurt.
Yeah, I think it is crazy. And I think that, the question that I always think about is that, what parents really want and what students really want is predictability and stability in their schools. Mm-hmm. They want to know, like, if I'm in third grade, who is my fourth grade teacher going to be? And some places will know that their fifth grade teacher. It's the staff is stable, the schools are well funded, and the resources are there. And so if you're in a place where that's the case, my sense is that your education experience is better than it was 35 years ago. You have more access to understanding the world. You have a much more rounded, more international sort of approach to schools than existed, 35 years ago. If you are not in a situation like that, you are in a position where instability is the norm, where experiments like school turnarounds, you talked about everybody in the school being there, a school turnaround where everybody in the school is fired and forced to reapply for their jobs. You're in a situation like in Chicago, if you are in one of those schools on the south or west side that was at annual risk of closure, that if you are in a school on some parts of the city where there are just very few students, those kinds of experiences are going to be worse. And I think that's really the challenge, is that we have a two-tiered education system, depending on whether you're in a spot that's well-funded or one that's not. And those places that aren't tend to serve students that are Black and brown students.
And add some other tiers, because we do have a prep school system that's very real. And even within the public school system, you have the highly selective schools that competitive with the elite prep school. I mean, like you're going to get, you're going to pump out some merit scholars out of Whitney Young, as you will at Latin and Francis Parker and Lab, right? But something, is we're looking at this disparity in education, and Commissioner Brandon Johnson, this is dangerous. I mean, did you see, what does it look like when you have a system that is underfunded to this degree? I mean, as a teacher, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Santita. And what it looked like and what it still looks like, it's schools without social workers and schools without counselors. It's schools without librarians or a library. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, but I believe on the west side of Chicago, I think maybe we have one librarian for the entire west side of Chicago.
Wait, what?
Is that right, Kurt? I mean,
that's my that's my recollection. Yeah,
there's only one librarian that services the entire region in which I'm raising my family. I represent the west side of Chicago, a good portion of the west side of Chicago, on the county board of commissioners. And it's gruesome. It's very isolating. That's what it looks like. The office of the mayor ultimately is in control over the Chicago public schools. We obviously fought to bring democracy to Chicago, and so we will have an elected representative school board. But that's what it looks like. It's a dictatorial structure that has been this way for a very long time, Santita. And when you mention the selectivity, that's the part that I don't know if we spend enough time really dissecting. We have really created a system in Chicago where children are deemed ineligible for school.
What do you mean?
When you think about what that does. So essentially, if a child, let's take our child for example, because of the activities that he's in, there are very little opportunities for our child to attend a school that has everything that he needs. So, for instance, our son is a baseball player, he's an athlete, he's a soccer player, he plays the violin, and there are essentially no schools on the west side of Chicago that would offer all of that. We're not even talking about the curriculum, right? We're just talking about activities and interests, the things that motivate children. And as much as, Kurt and I, we were social studies teachers, as much as we get excited about the 5 causes of the American Revolution, I can tell you 14-year-olds are not necessarily jumping up and down.
I wasn't.
As we discuss different units of history. And as exciting and engaging as we might be, it's the art, it's music, it's the sports, it's digital editing, it's photography, it's all those other components of a child's development that ultimately are either underfunded or it's non-existent. And so what I'm getting at is that families literally have to apply for a school that meets their needs versus being able to go to the neighborhood school that has everything that every child deserves. And when you apply, the system reports back to children who are 14 years old. It literally labels them ineligible for a particular school that the system has deemed that they don't fit or they don't qualify for.
Wow.
The children are having an easier time applying for college and getting into college than they are getting into a high school in their own city.
Well, particularly a neighborhood high school, right? I mean, that's one of my concerns, Commissioner Johnson. The neighborhood schools. I mean, I had to travel, 45 minutes to an hour to get to Whitney Young every day. Okay. And I didn't mind it. Because when I was looking at high school, and of course in 7th grade, Whitney Young was the first of its kind, and it was it, and people were clawing to get in. Okay. Because it was a state of the art high school that had University of Chicago Lab School, and Francis Parker and Latin looking over their shoulders, right? Because you had a full building for fine arts. You had a full building for physical education. You had a full building for academics, and they pulled the top teachers from all over the city. Please, even Joe Hannon, who was the superintendent of schools at the time, pulled his daughter out of her high school and put her there. I'm not mad at anybody, but I said, wait a minute, what about Kenwood? What about South Shore High School? What about Englewood? What about Dunbar? And what about the vocational schools? We're missing just we're not educating people. And the charter schools, do they have football teams and baseball teams and tennis teams? Do they have full musical programs? Come on, Commissioner Johnson, we're not educating our children. What are we doing?
What we're doing is we're creating a deeper stratified structure where people win and people lose. It's literally tearing out the tears, if you will, as that has been described. Not to take the space of the theologian of the call, but it's like the wheat and the tear, and they're looking at folks who are poor like the tares, and you tear them out, right? You don't give them access. And you're creating an entire city of selectivity. We have a literal city of selectivity, right? You have to qualify to be able to live in a certain neighborhood because it's just become unaffordable. You have to qualify to be able to have access to transportation, trying to qualify to be able to access a public school. We literally are creating lines in our system. And our job, quite frankly, our job should be to reduce the number of lines that people have to stand in. But unfortunately, you have a system where parents have to show up with hand and hat in hand, begging for what should be a basic right.
But it's not.
Tell you, taught them.
But it's not. And that was Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr.'s point in constructing the Education Amendment, which you mentioned yesterday, which would grant equal access to equal high quality education for all students in America, for everybody. Equal access to equal high quality education. Because he started pouring over, because Jesse is a brilliant guy, and he's someone who he would pour over that Constitution. I think he could recite it, quite frankly. And he said there are basic rights, Kurt, that we do not have. In 2016, 7 families sued Michigan, claiming that the state failed to provide Detroit students with the most fundamental of skills, the ability to read. In May of 2020, a federal appeals court ruled in their favor, but this case was actually settled out of court by Governor Whitmer. So they do have a right, but they had to settle this case out of court. So what does this say to you? Because this is not just Detroit. You could have done this here. You had a young man who was either the salutatorian or the valedictorian of his class in a high school in Detroit. He got to college in Florida and found out that he was illiterate, that he was functionally illiterate. He had the drive. He just didn't have the skills. And you had another school in Detroit where I think it was a 7th or 8th grader who was the brightest kid in his class. He was teaching the class, Kurt Hilgendorf, teaching the class. What are we doing in the United States?
As we're having this discussion this morning, my thought was the places where I spent the most time in my own career teaching are schools that no longer exist, right? Mm-hmm. Englewood High School no longer exists. Mm-hmm. John Hope High School in Englewood no longer exists. And, as you were talking, and then I taught at Von Cuban High School in the Northwest Side. I had students taking, riding the train and bus 2 hours to get to school, and just thinking, this is insane. And so, the fact that that's the story in Chicago is that you have, students who don't have any alma maters anymore because those alma maters don't exist. You have students in Detroit who are going through and having to either teach the class or, have gone through and have been failed. This is what Brandon was talking about, what I was talking about in terms of this two-tiered education system. And the reality is that these lawsuits that have been moved forward across the country on the need to have, equity in education or appropriate equity in funding for education have often been dismissed as not the responsibility of government. In Illinois, the state constitution says that the state will provide for the majority of funding in education. That's great, but it's never been enforced by the courts, and there have been multiple lawsuits here in Illinois to try to get the state to do that. The consequence of that has been that you have places like, the Chicago Public Schools, hundreds of rural school districts across the state, and some of the urban centers in Illinois that are funded at 2/3 what they should have, and you have parts of the suburban Chicago, east, suburban St. Louis, and other parts of the state that are funded at well over 100%. And those are the places that have the least, that are serving the kids with the least needs coming in the door. And so this is a situation where this has been a long, entrenched problem where kids, depending on what your zip code is, have not had the opportunity to learn in the same condition as kids who may live, 5 or 10 minutes away.
Well, just, Commissioner Brandon Johnson is going to be staying with us, and I know that you've got to go. Marilyn, I hope you will call us back because you have a real issue that I think that we need to address on the show today. I've got a couple of minutes before we go. What should we be fighting for in terms of policy? This is an election season. We're about to go into another one in 2 years. It seems that education is not something that we really talk about. What should we be fighting for, Kurt Hilgendorf?
I think there's two things that need to happen. Just right off the top, the first is to make sure that we're fighting for the revenue that our schools and students deserve, to make sure that they actually can be funded over a long period of time so that there's actually some stability and predictability in the schools. That's the one thing that people want to know is my school going to be there? Are the people who work in that school going to be there? Are my kids' friends and classmates going to be there? I think that's the first thing you have to do is make sure that they're funded. The second thing, and Brandon mentioned this, we have to make sure that they're staffed. You can't have a school without a library. Like, that's not a school. That's not without a librarian. That's just, as Karen Lewis used to say, that's just a room full of books. I think that you have to have appropriate staffing in the schools. And that means that you need to have a librarian in every school. That means that you need to have a social worker in every school, that you need to have a school nurse in every school. And what's interesting about Chicago is that the history of nurses in Chicago were we needed to have nurses to start making sure that students had the polio vaccine and making sure that students had other appropriate shots coming out of a pandemic that has taken, more than 1 million lives in this country, making sure that we have the mental and health and physical health care resources in every school in the country, and and specifically every school in Chicago seems like a pretty small ask to honor the sacrifice that so many people have made over the last couple of years. And so just like making sure that there are the people and the resources in every building so that kids can actually have the school, the school they need, so that there's a reading specialist so that kids aren't, graduating high school functionally illiterate, to make sure that there's a tech coordinator in every school so that the technology needs that the kids have and that the school has can be met. These are things that could happen in Chicago with no problem. It's a question of the political will to make it happen.
And it could happen all over the country, everybody. Do we have the political will? Do you have a right to be literate? Do you? The children of Detroit said, look, we're going to sue the state because you're depriving us of the right to be literate. But I'm wondering, do we really believe that people have the right to be literate, or is this something that you deserve? See, we talk about this with healthcare and everything else. See, there's some fundamental rights I believe that we have. I think you have the right to food, clothing, and shelter, education. Everybody doesn't feel that way. Everybody doesn't believe that. So I want to hear what your thoughts are. We're underfunding K through 12 in the public school system in the United States of America by at least $150 billion. We don't have 300,000 teachers in the system all across America right now, at least 2,000 in the state of Illinois. What are you sending your child to? What does that school look like today? Are they in an overcrowded classroom? What is going on? We should really care. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Call me at 773-763-9278. Stay right there. Kurt Hilgendorf, thank you so much for being with us today.
The sounds of stress.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on, Santita. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to come in anytime.
Oh, can't wait to have you back. I'll love to your baby.
A pounding headache.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll let her know.
Oh, you know what I saw when I saw his text to me last night, Brandon. I said, "Ooh, you know, I used to travel with my father on weekends. He would take me to different places with him because he wanted me to. When I was like 4 and 4, well, actually, that was one of the first times I met, well, that I can remember visiting with Dr. King. My father took me to Atlanta with him. And he would take me, and I'm just going through the airport with him, and I think he was carrying me through the airport because I was like 3. And
Dr. Bayer's up.
Oh, thank you. And he would do his best with my pigtails, and someone else would kind of get it together.
You need a hire
But those things really mean a lot.
They're all-in-one hiring
Dr.
platform
Byer?
that helps you attract, interview.
Yes, hi, good morning.
How are
Visit
you?
Indeed.com/credit.
Good, how are you?
We've got Commissioner Johnson with us right now.
Hey, what's going on, Doc? Hi, Commissioner Johnson.
Much of the nation.
Hey, so you running for mayor?
Weather again today.
Oh, are you really?
Thunderstorms in the
Wow. Come on, we all want you to.
The West will sweat
Are you serious?
Possibly record-shattering.
Oh, come on, come on.
South, there may be more.
I am genuinely
I
surprised.
wouldn't say on
What?
the air. I wouldn't say on the air. Come on.
Emergency. Bring their worsened problems.
You got me on that one.
That's the rumor. But
What?
you know how rumors are. You can't believe them.
Look, hey, I'm so busy trying to keep up with everything else. I missed that one, Brandon. Of course, Brandon didn't tell me, and I thought we were friends.
He's humble. That's why he'd be a good mayor.
Not telling anybody anything.
And also giving out water for
Oh,
other
right,
purposes.
right.
The fierce weather.
Probably told Jonathan, but he didn't tell me.
2 children.
That's all right.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
We have Anita on the line. She wants to talk about
there's a lot of
she wants to talk about the modern school system and the situation and how we can improve it. I'm gonna text you the information too, but I just want to let you know. So maybe we go to her after Marilyn.
I would just say it like that.
I don't know. Let me see.
I'm only saying that just so you just knock it out and get it over with.
Oh
'cause
no,
I know-
I kind of know. I know where Anita's going to go, and I appreciate it. I do.
Yeah, I mean, if you need, I can. If she says anything controversial or whatever, I'll be on.
No. It's good. She's been with me now. 12 years? No, 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
Before she moved to North Carolina. So no, trust me, it's all good. And she's with me on everything that I do.
Yeah, no, just to make sure, get her out of the way because I know she can stay on hold for a long time and sometimes she'll complain a little.
No, I trust me, I get it. I do.
Okay.
But
All right.
thank
Well,
you.
yeah, however you wanna do it.
Thank you so much. Renee Criswell wants you to run for mayor.
An indictment has charged 26.
Renee, why don't you call in, Renee? Renee? I know she's getting ready to go for it, but she needs to put us on speaker and make her comments. Because she's Renee's brilliant and has a whole lot to say.
Atlanta United player Guzan and Atlanta Falcons player Calvin Ridley. I'm Oscar Wells Gabriel.
A New Jersey man who posed as a former New England Patriots player.
And I have a heart for public schools. My whole family, we all do, because we all at least started in public schools, and I did K through 12.
Scott Speed
And
is 25.
It's just, when I think of these charter schools, and I'm like, you all don't have homecoming and football games. And even though I didn't go to football games, my mother was not fun. Ouch. But just all of these, I did participate in the parade. We did make some floats. I mean, all this stuff is part of what you have people who are academically talented, vocationally talented, people who are musically talented, artistically gifted.
More
I mean,
delays are for Wolf Road.
oh my
most of the way to
gosh.
downtown Chicago. It's now an hour.
I mean,
from
they're
39
just whole areas of education that we're not even touching now, Brandon.
30 minutes
And that to me is
right,
dangerous.
Huh? That's right. Mark bands, concert choirs, student council, class council, school spirit week. I mean, just things that make high school an experience. It goes by fast, and we're forcing children into specialization. Just get cruel.
55 to DeSable Lakeshore Drive.
You know, and I think it's very dangerous, you know, because you're missing out on the education of people, of our young people. That's part of your education, your socialization. But also, I mean, LeBron James, I mean, our great athletes don't come out of private schools. They don't.
Plus, you'll even
Not in the main.
$300
At least
gift.
their initial
Good
education
sleep
comes through the public school system. They might go to a Catholic high school, whatever, but those are thank you so much, Postmate. Those are exceptional schools.
Court, Roe v. Wade is gone, gone. I have to tell you, I am a little testy. I do not like what I see happening. It is
Okay.
lighting a fire under
So
me.
everybody, Renee, I wish you'd call in, and Paula, I wish you'd call in too.
It is time
That would
to
be very
fight
nice.
for your democracy. Do you
Fighting
see
for the right to
world
literacy.
changing? Are you gonna
Okay,
wake
so
up
who
one
do we
morning
have
and look
with
out
us
your
right
window and
now?
See a tank in the street and go, wow, how did that happen?
It's just Dr. Bayer and Brandon Johnson, and then
Okay.
again we have Marilyn and Anita on hold.
And you have to get
I feel
Chappelle.
stronger about the.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, let me.
No worries.
I'll get her up once we get the show going. It should
Okay.
take like a couple seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Keep listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
The Tom Hartman radio program provides all of the intelligence, information, and insight you'll need to win the water cooler wars. Weekdays 11 to 2 right here on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Tuesday, August 30th, 2022. Where did the summer go? Well, it's still with us at least for another month. So enjoy. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk about education today. K through 12, public education is underfunded by $150 billion. How can that be? We've got 300,000 teachers who are not in those positions this year, and paraprofessionals who are not in those positions. At least 2,000 of those persons are in the state of Illinois alone. What are we sending our children back to? What does school look like for them now? I mean, you don't have people who are teaching. You now have the governor of Florida who's saying you don't have to have a 4-year degree to teach. And just on and on and on and on and on it goes. We don't value education, but we do value war. We do. We just gave $3 billion more to Ukraine, and we can't come up. We said no to free COVID tests. Not free, but COVID tests that the government would pay for. Well, dude's making money off of Ukraine. You know that's what it is. Everybody. Let's go to some of these headlines. It's 81 degrees. That will be the high today in Chicago. Mostly sunny. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 80 degrees, sunny. The Dow closed down 184 points. The NASDAQ closed down 124 points. And the S&P 500 closed down 27 points. In Major League Baseball, the Royals will be here in Chicago playing the White Sox. And the Blue Jays, well, they bested the Cubs 5-4, but it was a great game. The Twins 4-2, yay, over the Red Sox. Everybody flooding. And the Southeast is prompting alarms, everybody. In the great state of Mississippi, in their capital, the governor, Tate Reeves, has declared a state of emergency for their capital, Jackson, Mississippi, after its main water treatment center failed yesterday, leaving all residents there without enough water to flush toilets or fight fires. Wow. State authorities are now scrambling to begin distributing water to 180,000 residents, according to the governor, who said, quote, please stay safe, do not drink the water, close quote, explaining that untreated water from the reservoir is being pushed through the pipes. Wow. That is really, really, really dangerous, everybody. Please. And this is where our infrastructure needs a lot of, needs to be brought into the 21st century, everybody. Think about that. Think about that. The U.S. government faces a deadline today to respond in writing to former President Donald Trump's request for a special master to oversee the FBI's review of fought the baseball owners on, and they hated him for it. He said, look, most of my players, and we recruit heavily in Venezuela, we don't go into the inner cities anymore. Isn't that interesting? Because you can get Latin American players and Central American players for cheap. And he said, no, what you're going to do is guarantee each one of these young men who you take into the minors, you're going to guarantee them some money so that if they don't make it into the majors, they will have some monies. Check it out, everybody. It was a wonderful story that I think I read in The Nation. It was wonderful, 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 everybody. So let's look at education, everybody. But as we look at education, let's look at financial freedom. Financial freedom. I want you to call Team Hochberg. If you do not have good credit, if you need to build your credit, if you need to rebuild your credit, if you are using your debit card, no, you shouldn't be using your debit card. You need to be using a credit card, but maybe you don't have enough credit. Your credit's not good enough for you to get a credit card. The debit card is about it for you. Well, if you want to refinance your home, if you want to purchase a new home, but you say, wait a minute, I don't think I've got too much debt to purchase a home. I don't have good credit. I don't know. No. If you want to find out about reverse mortgages, all of these things, call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit 56david.com, 56david.com, so that you can get your financial life in order and become a homeowner, so that you can get rid of this credit card debt, so that you can get credit cards. Think of another David who posted this 5-star Google review after working with Team Hochberg. He said, my wife and I make good money, but we had no way to pay off our credit card debts, $45,000 in credit card debts. Some people have 6-figure credit card debts. You know, when you buy your groceries and you might pay your mortgage, a whole lot of things happen, everybody. In the meantime, they said working with Team Hochberg eliminated their stress, and they were able to save over $1,000 a month. That could be you. Don't be ashamed. Everybody's struggling in this economy. Everybody's struggling. And they can help you to unwind whatever financial bind you are in. Call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. And let's go on and get on the road to financial freedom. Visit the 56david.com. Let's talk about education, everybody. All of our children are going back to school, but what are they going back? Brandon Johnson, Commissioner Brandon Johnson, of course, who has his own show here on on 820 a.m. here in Chicago, WCPT, at 9 o'clock on Sunday after Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Thank you very much. But you need to tune into that show. And of course, he is Illinois Cook County Commissioner. Brandon Johnson, former teacher with the Chicago Public Schools and union leader. And of course, we have got Dr. B. I think that's what we're going to call you from here on out. We love you, Dr. Byer. Of course, he's a former Chicago Public School principal, and he's an educator. And we thank God for him and his courage. I mean, some people stick their necks out for our children at peril to their own careers because they're fighting for the children, and he's one of those persons. He is our guy, one of our heroes. And we've got Mrs. Shapiro Wells. Shapiro called in and said, you know what, I want to be in on this conversation. I want to be in on this conversation because I've sent my children through the public schools, and it has been a struggle, but all of our children, very well educated, professional, going to graduate school, and on and on and on. But wow, it's not supposed to be this difficult. Let me grab a couple of these callers before I go to my guest. Very quickly, Anita from North Carolina, what's on your mind?
Good morning.
Good morning, Anita.
Good morning. There is nothing more excellent than the three of your father's children that I know have wonderful educations. You're able to, I mean, you guys are just like the perfect people to be an example for all students of America. You represent the common good. You represent nonviolence to solve global issues, and you work on the very best things for humanity. And if no one sees that, I do, and I'm very appreciative of it. I'm very grateful you all and your father are on this planet, and your mom. Now, I know your father, but I don't know your mom. Another thing is...
we are representations of our mom. Be real clear. Thank you so much for that.
Wait a minute real quickly. Princess Diana, Prince Harry, and Prince Philip, you and your brothers, the two that I know, Jonathan and Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., you guys need to do something to help keep that racism down, where I think these people are able to help in a big way and keep the new generations of children working on what your dad said globally. I think that was a big blessing that Princess Diana fought really hard to do things that were correct. And unfortunately, her life has ended, and we still have to continue. But I think Prince Harry and Prince Philip will. Wait a minute, what's their name? Philip and William.
William.
Okay, if you guys work with them about what democracy is and what your father has taught you all and what you know of America, I think we could blend a lot of the white racism down in the younger generations and keep it off of that crazy stuff that it can get off into. And then you're correct about that. Well, that's going to help the education to get the racism out. And then another thing is that I think after that we can go forward. People like me, I've got my 6th through college, and people don't want to go back to where people had no education. And we got people coming here that have parents that have 2nd grade educations. They don't catch on to education, not necessarily right away, but we can close that gap a little bit when we have funds to do it. But our children here that are already progressing, we have to move everybody forward, not just the worst, the people that didn't get an advantage, but we also have to move the ones that have advantage and teach them to be like your father, community spirited, global minded, for the better reason.
Sure.
And I think if we do that, I think everything will push forward in the right direction. But you guys can't duck out. You all we have. So the Democrat parties and all of that, that's not working for us right now. The only thing that's working is the civil rights movement.
Bless your heart. We love you, Anita. But I think we have a lot of wonderful people working in the community to improve things. And let's just all work together. But I thank you for all the love that you give our family. You give us a whole lot of credit. We're just doing the best that we can. Love you, love you, love you so much. Let me go to Marilyn. Marilyn, what's on your mind? Thank you for calling in today. Is Marilyn there?
I'm still here.
Hey, Marilyn.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, how are you?
I've been better, Miss Santana. I'm just, I'm trying to pray my way through this. Yesterday, I can't even lie. I was so sick, I probably would have passed for a Karen. Honestly. But after being able to come home and sit down and calm down and get back out of my flesh and into my spirit and handle this the godly way, the right way,
nonviolent, non-cursing, but it's just been too much to let go. When he come home and told me that story that day about how she let the 2 white children in and looked him in his face and said, y'all got to go to the back.
So now you have you're white, right, Marilyn?
Yes, ma'am.
And you have a child who's black, right?
Yes, ma'am. I have 3 amazing young men.
Okay. And you're saying their teachers are discriminating against them?
I feel like it is, because it's just been too much. Just like with the driver's license thing, I'm on a fixed income. And everybody's struggling right now. With this COVID thing, people were out for months, but I'm on disability. I'm on a fixed income. And I'm supposed to meet with Mr. Howard today, the principal at Greenville High School. And I told him I wanted Miss Palmer there because I opened up a very open line of communication because of his absences when his stomach problems. And I said, if anything comes up, call me. If I've got anything up concerning him, because she's over the absentee thing. But I never got a letter. I never got contacted by the school. I turned in, you're allowed so many doctor's excuses and all the parent excuses.
Let me ask you this. Have you been in touch, just to, because we're trying to stay with this particular topic, but you're dealing with an issue, and I want to see if we can help you when we can. When Commissioner Johnson, when you have someone who's dealing with these kinds of issues, because you can see she's got a whole range of issues, Marilyn does. She's a white parent. And I've had friends, and I think it's important to note, my friends, it's interesting. One of my friends said to me, it was when my white mother showed up that my teacher was nicer to me. She didn't think that I was just a black boy, which is interesting too, because colorism is a real thing. And there's that. But what recourse does she have? A teacher who you believe, or, you have some examples, some anecdotes about her behaving, or her or him, or her or he behaving in a, she or he, excuse me, behaving in a discriminatory fashion against your child. Commissioner Johnson, what recourse do you have? Wherever you live, do you have any recourse?
You do, and this is pervasive, quite frankly, these type of and so, what we encourage parents to do in situations like this is a variety of outlets. One can always, if there are community-based organizations that you are aware of that are public school advocates, or perhaps they're advocates for children who are diverse learners. I don't know, where you are in the country, but there are typically organizations that are very supportive of, public schools and making sure that Black students in particular are being seen. The other, option always is, if there are civil rights organizations, is there a local chapter of the NAACP, the Urban League, Rainbow Push, right? Santita, I know you can attest to this, the number of folks that have gone directly to Reverend Jackson and Rainbow Push that we were able to work with through the CTU, Chicago Teachers Union. There are a number of linkages there. And that's the other thing. You can talk directly to educators who are sympathetic as well as responsible when it comes to dealing with matters like this. I'll be very frank with you. There are institutional blocks and barriers in every aspect of our society. And that doesn't just include law enforcement. That's also educators that have certain bias is against Black boys in particular. So it's actually well documented.
Dr. Beyer? I'm sorry.
There's also your elected representatives as well, right? If there's a state rep, trustee, those are all good places that I would start.
And set up camp at that state rep's office, at your alderman's office. Dr. Beyer, what say you? Where does the principal come in in a case like this?
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple things I want to add, though, is that, one, always document everything as much as possible and as soon as possible so you don't forget it. because issues have been brought to me as a principal, and if I don't have all the details, if I don't have the entire story, it's hard to address, right? If someone and it has happened sometimes against me and said, this is a racist policy, this is a racist action. Starting off with that, sometimes not always the best move. You got to start off saying, this is what's happening. How does this really look, right? This is not good. But document everything and then go to organizations, go to the principal. But where the principal stands is their responsibility. Unfortunately, education, schools are a reflection of society, and we all have biases and we all have things we need to learn and work on. But the principal should be the main person who addresses that, who brings in training for anti-bias training, who is willing to step up and, acknowledge that these things are happening. But oftentimes, unfortunately, principals are simply following the rules and the policies that are handed down to them, from above them. And that was the case that, I withheld a child's diploma, a high school diploma, because they owed fees. Well, that was a standard process, standard policy across the board. It's definitely a classist policy, but the child and the mother took that to be a racist policy. And they took my action to be racist, and they accused me of that. And, we sat down and, I had to work around the policy to change that for that student to make an exception. But unfortunately, the system is as it is because it's a reflection of the wider society, and we all have to kind of put our shoulder in to change that. So the principal does play a part, but I'd say first and foremost, document it as much detail as possible, write a story, narrating it, and then bring that to whoever you can to open up some eyes and ears.
Marilyn, did that help you at all? Have you been documenting? Have you been writing all of this down?
Not yet. I have contacted the news centers. I am going to keep my video going when I speak with Mr. Howard today on my phone. Because I know in my mind the young lady is going to deny. But with one of his excuses, I turned in a letter from the doctor about his stomach and the way sometimes I'm trying to watch my wording because I know we're on live radio with his stomach and having to stay close to the toilet. And, and I asked Mr. Howard yesterday, I said, what did the letter just magically disappear? I said, you got the excuse. I said, they were turned in together. So, I mean, it's too much for me. I've let a lot roll off, and I talk a lot of stuff up to people. They don't really have any God about them or any morals or any values, but I don't know. I mean, living in this town.
Where are you?
Is like living in country.
Where are
Greenville,
you?
Alabama.
You're where now?
Greenville, Alabama.
Okay.
Greenville,
Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? I think what you need to do, in addition to having the video, I think you need to write this down. Because number one, writing helps everybody. It helps you to reason everything out. But to have a timeline, right? I think that's very, very important, Marilyn. You've got to. And I know the NAACP is very active down there. And once you write it down, then they can do something. Because, they're basically they're the legal arm of the civil rights movement. But you can always stay in touch with me, and I'll get you in touch with some people at Rainbow Push. But I know we know some people at the NAACP down there, and I think that they could really be helpful to you.
I will send an email because I did set a call, and I did for a whole hour. My phone went dead. So, I mean,
but Marilyn,
but
Marilyn, you got to write everything down. Got to write everything down. People respond to that. Stay right there. I've got to go to this break. We're going to get some information from you, and see what we can do. but you got to write it down. Stay right there, everybody. Going to hear from Chappelle the Pearl and Noel and everybody else. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-WCPT. Let's talk about education. The education system K through 12 is underfunded by $150 billion in the United States. We've got 300,000 teachers and teaching assistants and paraprofessionals who will be missing from our schools this year. Education Secretary Cardona has said that the average teacher pay is up only $29 over 25 years. We got a lot of issues we got to deal with, everybody. Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in a minute. Miss Marilyn?
New information, explosive new information.
Okay, I don't want you to information here. I want you to leave it with my board operator. And no, because we're on Facebook Live, and I know you don't want to give your information to the whole world, right?
In Memphis, Tennessee, fired 7 workers. No,
it's okay. It's okay. Look, we have a wonderful family here, and I'm so glad that you listened today, and I'm glad that you felt comfortable enough to call in.
Can be traced back to the early.
Santita, can I say something to Miss Marilyn?
Absolutely.
Quickly.
Disband.
I want to also say, Miss Marilyn, think about getting a 504 plan for your child, because they will give accommodations to him so that way he can get more support inside the school, especially when they have a illness or disability. They can get assistance, and they will get extra time with homework, with classwork, as well as also if they need breaks. All of it is huge. So that is something, a 504 IEP clinic. Just talk to the school district about it, and they should be able to accommodate him.
That is what is supposed to happen, and I did have to have that conversation.
Traffic and weather update.
And he raised his hand very politely, and then and the teacher, and I've always told him, be respectful, raise your hand first, and ask. But if your stomach is boiling, you got to go. After you ask, hold no, say, excuse me, ma'am, but I got to go, and I'll just go and put up.
Well, you're dealing with people who are inclined to mistreat your child, and that happens. Not only do they have to learn how to deal with it, in fact, I see you put your number here. So what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, I'm going to delete that comment because I don't want everybody to have your number, okay? But I have it. But you are, but I think the NAACP is your best bet down there. But I will ask. Okay? I'm sorry, Marilyn?
I'm going to send them an email once I get back from my meeting.
The meteorologist, Jennifer, Blue Chiefs.
Honestly,
it's 69.
This is Joanne Santita, and here at WCPT, we really love pets. So much.
Palmer, who is over the
cat every month.
But I would very definitely
Cruelty Society will
I'll have a
celebrity on the WCPTA20.com homepage. Every month we'll talk live.
Well, let me tell
Do
you.
you want me to take her information?
Okay, well, actually, she put it up here, but you can take it again for me.
Oh, she already put. I'll ask her what she wants to do.
Oh, okay. Thank you, and an email address.
Okay. Yeah.
I appreciate it, Marilyn.
Supreme Court decision the Dobbs.
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to have to push on to the rest of this segment. But what Mr. Lozano is about to do is get your information. He's not pulled your number. You like your email and things like that. Let me see who I know down in that area. Okay.
Protect the rights of all Americans.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
No. Thank you for calling in. I'm so glad that you felt that you could.
With abortion rights.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
God bless you and your children.
Not have been able to purchase a weapon.
They are your blessings from God.
I voted
30 seconds.
Amen to that. Yes.
Never happens again.
However else somebody feels about it, that's their problem, and it truly is a problem.
The time to
But blessings to you. Okay.
Too quickly for
All right, 15 seconds.
for
Alrighty.
more
Thank you.
information.
So just an email.
I'm Mike Quigley. And
Her email, yes, just everything. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Cosme.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Everybody keep calling in. I've got a lot of calls, but you know, we've been talking with Commissioner Brandon Johnson, Illinois County Commissioner Brandon Johnson, about education. And now we're looking at some of the issues that people are dealing with every day. I mean, these everyday issues that if you don't have people in the schools, Commissioner Johnson, how can you deal with Miss Maryland's problems? Dr. Michael Byer, former Chicago Public Schools principal and an educator. I mean, when you don't have people who are culturally sensitive, when you don't have systems that really try to make the society better, which is what schools should be doing, these are the things that can happen. And of course, what are your thoughts on the Chicago public school system, Mrs. Shapiro Wells? Of course, you've had several children in it, and you've got a couple of kids
to get her up
right now.
Yes, Santita. The twins just started kindergarten. I have a sophomore at Lincoln Park. And I could tell you that we're still fighting to make sure that all of the kids get proper resources and assistance as they need. What I'm noticing, Santita, is that the schools lack a lot of resources. I heard one comment yesterday about the lack of textbooks in the schools, and it's true. They're not coming home with textbooks because the schools are no longer ordering the textbooks. They have books that they've had for years and years and years, but they have not ordered new textbooks for these students. So there's not enough to go around. And I remember, when I was in school, we used to, have, we used to get in line to get our books. Every student had a book. Every teacher was able to put out their own lesson plan. Now what I'm noticing is that there is this universal teaching pattern that teachers are required to follow. So the teachers don't have freedom anymore to make their own lesson plans and to teach the way that they want or they feel that the kids can learn best. They're required to teach to a standard of standardized testing more so than teaching them real life situations, especially when I think of this Common Core math. And I'm like, why are we going around doing 50 million steps when we can just do 2? Mm-hmm. And this whole notion of this is a proper way to learn is crazy. And when I think about how they have eliminated the library, I mean, like, they don't even know how to, how we used to have to learn the
Dewey Decimal System. Thank you, Miss Carter. Oh my gosh. I mean, and it was like, would you just let me check out my book already? Oh my gosh. But you know what? But then I could go downtown to the main library because, God bless her, because of what Miss Carter told us, you knew, and then when you got to college, you could navigate the library because of what you learned in grammar school about the libraries. You learned how to do, which teaches you to do research. That's what libraries teach you to do, Shapiro. I mean, now that I kind of tease all of that out.
Google, Santita. Everything is Google. I remember having to bring home these big encyclopedias, and we had we had to research. But they're missing so many life skills: cursive writing, spelling. All of that has been eliminated.
But wait. But Shapiro, hold on, because let me bring Dr. Byer back in here. You know where they're not eliminating those lessons? In the prep schools. Oh, no. They're teaching cursive in prep schools. They have libraries in prep schools. They have all the sports in prep schools. They have the music in the prep schools. They have the really blinged out art programs in the prep schools, but not in the public schools. What is that telling us, Dr. Byer?
Well, and they have them in certain suburban schools
And certain
not
high
all.
schools, excuse me.
The and
selective
certain high
ones.
schools, and so does Select. And so unfortunately, the resources are again mimicking the wider society, and they're given to some and not others. And I just watched a forum last night. The former CPS CEO, Dr. Jackson, pointed out that CPS is only funded 70% of what they need to be. We're $2 billion every single year, $2 billion below what it should be. That's a lot of money. So we can argue about the resource, but in the end of the day, if the whole district does not have them, that's the biggest problem. And this is true with suburban districts, is true with rural districts, because school funding is based on local property taxes. And so it basically reflects the society around it. Now, Chicago has a lot more money, and we could allocate a lot more money if we wanted to, but that's a choice leaders part of the district, but are outside of it and up to the mayor's office. So that's a reflection of it. A lot of schools do keep teaching these skills.
Ooh, Dr. Meyer?
Montessori school that's not CPS. So there are opportunities out there. But in CPS, because we were so stretched thin of resources, of time, of staff, so stretched thin that all the focus becomes put on the test. However, I also want to point out, though, that this is a false dichotomy of, this notion that you either teach the test or you teach the other things. And when it comes down to it is, good learning results in test scores, not test prep. Test prep does not result in better test scores, but solid, rigorous learning does get reflected in test scores. And this is true of just about anything. I was having a conversation with a person from a different state who oversees a number of schools, who said that, some schools he focuses on, or some of his schools focus on academics, other schools in his group focus on social justice, as if those two are incompatible. And you can and should teach them in conjunction. In fact, if you teach kids to open their eyes and look for injustices, that's real, genuine, rigorous learning. That will get them peaked on just learning more about the world, and it'll get them to read books and all the rest. So we're dealing with a lot of false dichotomies, which aren't healthy for schools, and teachers, unfortunately, buy into them just as much as parents do.
Commissioner Johnson, you now sit on the Cook County Board of Commissioners. You dole out the money. How do you decide how much money the public schools get, say in Chicago and in Evanston or Skokie? Or is that under your purview?
Yeah. And so it's not directly under my purview.
And
In
Robbins.
terms of how that's handled.
Wait a minute, and
Right,
Robbins.
exactly,
Let me not forget.
Yeah.
And Kankakee. And Pembroke.
Yeah.
Different communities, right?
Right. No, that's exactly right, Santita. Though it's not under my direct purview, I've been fighting for, equitable funding for a considerable amount of time. In fact, the organizing work that we've done with community organizations, the Chicago Teachers Union, other elected officials, the Principals Association, folks came together to establish a new equity vehicle that would fund according to the need. Because typically schools are funded based upon property value and property taxes, right? And so that becomes that becomes a really difficult circumstance, just simply because in poor communities, right, where the property value is not as strong, its property tax base is not available for the type of investment that would be required to educate in a well-rounded way that school community. And so we fought for a new funding formula that's essentially still underfunded. So you have a better vehicle in which you can distribute those resources. So those resources are based on need, not just population. But the challenge that we have here in Chicago, and it's not just been this mayor, but the previous mayor, that they have not worked in a collaborative way to make funding available to where needs are. So funding is still being based on population. This so-called school-based budgeting model, Dr. Byer could speak to it as well, probably more fluently than I can, because he actually had to arrange for those budgets. But you have a school-based budgeting that's based on population, so there's amount of money that you distribute towards per student. And so that makes it unequal. I mean, we want an equitable structure that funds our school systems based upon the need. So you could have 300 kids in a building, but if 87% of them are poor, then the investments need to match the critical needs that comes with living in abject poverty. And so unfortunately, you have a system that is still antiquated in terms of its approach to funding, which continues, to really starve out the schools that need it the most.
Let me go to Noel. Noel, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Ms. Jackson. How you doing?
It's great hearing your voice.
Yes. Same here. Yeah, speaking of education has gotten more expensive. I mean, why is everybody up in arms about the recent student loan forgiveness? I mean, no one was complaining when members of Congress took out PPP loans, or money goes to Ukraine or to Iraq or Afghanistan. They're not angry about that, but they're angry about U.S. citizens receiving assistance with their student loan. I mean, I'm puzzled about that.
Wait a minute. And having a $150 billion shortfall in the K through 12 public school system. I mean, I don't even understand how we can have. Thank you so much, Noel. He always bring up so many profound ideas. Let me go to Chris from Wheaton. Chris, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning, Chris.
Awesome. Oh, so good to hear the show as always. This is my lane, and this is my 20th year as a special education teacher, so I very much appreciate this.
Well, then before you make your comment, let me ask you this. When the NEA president said that there was a 300,000 person shortfall in terms of the teachers and the staffing of these public schools nationally, were you surprised by that?
Oh, absolutely not. And I can explain exactly why.
Okay.
And this is partially what I've expressed. So it's almost like you've done this for a minute. That's a great transition, Ms. Santita. Here's the thing about special education that I think the average person needs to understand. It is paraprofessionals that make that world go round. You can have one teacher and have 8 IAs or whatever they want to call them, instructional assistants who are integrating IEPs, and 504 plans for our special education students. The problem is with the funding for our schools, which you guys have so adroitly and correctly pointed to, is based on tax revenue from homes. What ends up happening is they get these transient, low-skill, low-education workers doing very necessary jobs. You can't tell me that being one-on-one support for a profoundly disabled child, God bless them and their beauty and splendor, $17,000 ain't going to cut it. You know what I mean? Like, we're out here getting poverty with, and this is the thing. When they say that $300,000 short on that, they're not talking about the teachers, because special literally lives and dies by its support staff. And until schools understand that these schools would not function without, that nice mom from down the street who has a degree from Northern Illinois, who her kids are now in junior high and she can leave during the school day. Those are the women and men, all across the country who are making these programs operate, So I love that you point that out, because that's a really important thing. And while I understand that in Florida, that thing where they're like, hey, if you got a degree, come teach. My first reaction to it was horror, because education breeds education. And however, I have seen people who have a poli-sci degree, who got a sociology degree, whatever type of degree, come in and absolutely be phenomenal, multifaceted, highly inspirational teachers. So it's a fine line. But yeah, that's a great issue that you bring up, because support staff is really what we're missing here in these discussions. Because I can assure you, That's the bread and butter of these schools. It doesn't matter if it's the richest school in the country or the poorest.
Oh, and look, I know what the people who assisted the teachers did, and I know that the teachers need assistance. I mean, it seems to me, Mrs. Wells, that you're one of those parents who steps in. I mean, what role do you see the having in the school system?
Well, I think just like what Chris was saying, the parents are stepping in where we're used to have hired help. I just received an email from the twin school, and they were asking for people to come out and help with, pickups and drop-offs to help cross the kids across the street, to come in and help in the library, to help the kids check out books, to fill in spots where there used to be paid people in those slots. And so we know that there is a need in school, and, we try to volunteer. So my whole family, we signed up for the CPS clearance so that way if the school does need, we could drop in and we're cleared enough to go into the school. But it's a sad case, Santita, because we should not have to be doing this. I know me personally have an increase of over double of my property taxes. So the property taxes are supposed to go to fund the schools. The lottery is supposed to go to fund the schools. Where is the money, Brandon? I need to know how is the money getting to the schools, because it seems to me that the money is not trickling down to where the need is. And I think that we need to first eliminate this whole notion of, the schools based on the area and the property taxes, because of the fact that the most impoverished areas are not getting enough funding. Mm-hmm. We need to basically put all the money in one pot and split it evenly. And people will probably have a hard time accepting that, but they have resources. It's like we're going from the rich areas, and they have immaculate schools. They have all the technology. They have all the professionals. The teachers are well paid. And then you go into another school system in an impoverished area, and they have nothing. Like literally nothing. I spent probably $300 just supplies. I'm getting toilet tissue. I'm getting paper towels, wipes, hand sanitizers, copy paper. I mean, it was like a list of 30 things that I had to bring on the first day of school. And these are, and it's not that the kids are in a very bad area. It's the fact that they don't have anything that that we're actually supplying the needs of the school for the whole year. And we shouldn't have to do that as parents.
Commissioner Johnson, what's the deal? Where's the money going? Where is the money going?
You're absolutely right. It's where it's not going. I mean, and it's not making it into our neighborhood schools. So even with the relief package that President Biden sent to Chicago, there's still $1 billion that we don't have an account for. And we've been pushing, the administration to release those funds to provide the support that these school communities need and deserve, quite frankly. It's not just about the distribution of them equally. It's about doing it in an equitable way. So where the needs are greater, the funding should follow.
But you know what?
That's the state law.
But Commissioner Johnson, it seems to me that's like a philosophical thing, because we don't believe in equal distribution of anything, of resources. Yeah, I mean, we just don't do that in the United States. Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible said, and it still is news, those who have get more, those who have not have to work for the haves and get nothing. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It is.
I mean,
and it doesn't have to be that way,
No.
Santita. It doesn't, because the state law actually has provided just that response to that that philosophy.
But but these laws are on the
Chicago
books, they're just
Public
not
Schools,
enacted. And it didn't start with Mayor Lightfoot. And sadly, it will, but I'm saying, and it won't end with Mayor Lightfoot. I mean, it didn't start with Mayor Daley, and it won't end with Mayor Daley. I'm trying to get to the principle and not the people who enact all this stuff. I'm trying to get to how can we make this fundamental sea change so that we will stop underfunding K through 12 education, so we will stop carping and moaning about people getting relief on debt. You shouldn't go into debt because you're getting an education, Commissioner Johnson and Dr. Byer. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, what are we doing here? But, let me give a couple of minutes to Dr. Byer, and then I'm going to give the final minutes to you, Commissioner Johnson. Dr. Byer, how do we get up out of this?
When it comes to Illinois, where we have the most government bodies, where we have one school equal one district. Some districts, that's it. There's one school in them. They're hyper local, and they control their funds, and they hang on to them, the last dying breath. So in states like Illinois, what we need to do is have a statewide funding for education. As Commissioner Johnson said, put all the money into one pot and divide it equally, or maybe Mr. Pearl said that. We need to change the state funding formula. And you're right, it didn't start with Daly, it didn't start with Light, but it's not going to end with any of them. It has to be a statewide solution. And that's true in many other states too. It can't be based on local property taxes. Otherwise, we're going to be fighting this fight for another century, another 2 centuries. We have to change the state funding formula. Simple as that.
And change our minds about how we educate. 1 minute to you, Mrs. Wells, and then I have to give the final 2 to my colleague here on WCPT, the man who's responsible for me getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Thank you very much, Commissioner Johnson. 1 minute to you, Mrs. Wells.
Yes, Santita, my whole thing is that we have to educate our children. We have to stop trying to put a Band-Aid where we need stitches. We know that our kids' schools are underfunded, and we know that the ability and the freedom to teach the way they want to teach our children. I mean, I grew up with some great teachers that changed my life. And I think that we have to begin to stop teaching towards a test and teach the children the way that they need. We have to go back to the basics, and we have to hold our elected officials accountable. You're talking about $1 billion, Brandon, that is missing. Okay, so that means that we need to sue the city or sue whoever has that access to that $1 billion, so that way we can get that for our children. We cannot sit up here and say, okay, give us the money. It's just like messing around with Trump and him having these files for over a year. No, where is the $1 billion? We have to be willing to go to court and find where the $1 billion is. It's not like it's a
Absolutely.
quarter. This is $1 billion of funds that belong to our children. It's not supposed to be misused or going to other resources, helping the city, short funds, none of that. So education, that's what we want.
Absolutely. Last minute and a half belongs to you, because we've had Shirley Lavier who's talked about all this misappropriation of the money. I mean, come on. This is just ridiculous. And there is no federal mandate to educate our children anyway, Commissioner Johnson. None.
Yeah,
the rotting starts at the top.
I agree. So there are 2 things. The funding formula has shifted for the first time in the state's history. And it's literally designed that where the needs are greater, that's where the money should go. Chicago Public Schools, they're rejecting that law under the leadership of the office of the mayor. There was at least $1.7 billion that I believe that was sent for federal aid to go to relief for communities in need. We got $1 billion at the county level. I can tell you where our money has gone and where it's going. It's going to relieve medical debt. It's going towards violence prevention. It's going towards universal basic income. It's going towards transportation. Every single thing that we are accounted for, it is transparent and available, and it speaks to the needs. This isn't rocket science. It isn't really complicated. The money is there. The formula is there. It's a matter of having the political will to distribute it in an equitable way.
Amen to that. No, amen to that. I mean, and we have to change our minds about education, everybody. Education is something to which all of us need access, and we need to acknowledge the fact that different people have different gifts. Some people are artistically gifted. Some people are athletically gifted. Some people are academically gifted. Some people are vocationally gifted. Look, if I'm trying to build a house, I don't want my lawyer. Not for that. I don't want a doctor for that. I need someone who came out of Dunbar. Someone who might have come out of some great vocational school. I remember when I took my first algebra class at Dunbar, because I went to John J. Pershing School, and we would pass by the house that the students built that was in the middle of the school. Do you know what that felt like to know that someone 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 had built a home, a fully functioning home? And I hear it's not even there anymore. What are we doing, everybody? Let's make a decision about educating. Not just our children, but adults who want to go back and get an education. Education is key. That is how a society grows. That is how we build. That is how we make America great. How about that? Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Love you, love you, love you so much. God bless you. And you tell someone that you love them today. And mean it. I love you, everybody. God bless. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson and Dr. Byer and Chaparral. You all are great.
They left, but Chaparral's still there.
Chaparral, do you have anything you want to say before I sign off?
No, Santita, I think we've addressed it all. I just think that we need to find out where this $1 billion is.
Well, you know, I'm gonna reach out to Trey LaRaviere and see if he can be back on, because, you know, he's been on top of that. He's been dead on it. And we have to, you know, because the fact is people rob Peter to pay Paul in all of these budgets. We do it in our own personal budgets. I get it. But the fact is there is no mandate, intellectual, spiritual, and financial mandate to educate our children. There's none. And the fact is we want to keep people entertained, and we don't want to keep them enlightened. And that's a dangerous thing. And we need to push back on that. The TVs get bigger and bigger and the libraries get smaller and smaller. Now, you know, oh, I don't need to buy a book. I can get it in the cloud. Now, you know, you told me I need to get some of my books away. Now, you know, that's not going to happen, right? Okay. So we just I got to get a place where I'm serious, because I don't believe in that. I believe in having hard copies of books. I do. And I don't have a problem with that. I believe in having books and I read them. I'm not going to cloud. If the cloud goes down, then I can't read. Oh, no, not going to happen. Nope. When I see a study, I download it. No, I'm not going to do that. We need to stop playing these games. We don't go to the libraries anymore. Google. No. When you go through the library and you go through the stacks and see the books, you might bump into something you hadn't even thought about. Whether it's a book of literature, poetry, something. It's important to be in the midst of books. It's important to be in the midst of ideas. I mean, I just came across a story about homeschooling, and I want to talk about that because that's a real issue. I think, you know, these are real issues, Chaparral, that we've got to deal with. We've got to deal with it. We've got to deal with them. So I want to thank you jumping into that. You know, of course, you are a pearl, Chaparral. Brilliant. And I'm got to get back in touch with Miss Phillips so we can find out about her son, see what's going on there. But love you all, everybody. Yeah. And thank you for giving her that information. That meant a whole lot. And, you know, you can see she's trying to do everything she can.
Yeah, you know, sometimes you just need the support of, you know, other parents, because sometimes, you know, people have to be a resource to me. So I always try to, you know, spread the same knowledge that I've gained to help other parents as well, you know. And the thing that Dr. Byer was saying too is, you know, to write everything down. I mean, like literally with Dr. Byer, you know, we were able to implement a Black Student Union just because, you know, we reached out to him. You know, when he was the principal at the school, and he was open to listening and actually allowing the kids to do that. So I mean, you have to be able to have that type of relationship, and not just like, you know, just bringing up problems, but also solutions to make the school better, more inclusive, and everything like that. So I just think that everybody has to build a rapport together, so that way the kids are able to, you know, expand. You know, I mean, I miss school. I miss our early enrichment programs and all this. It's just like my kids
these kids today are not getting it. I remember going to the symphony and the opera. I mean, we were doing everything, and I'm like, wow, they don't have any of that.
I mean, going to the Museum of Science and Industry, and the science fairs, and just all of that was so important to our development. The school assemblies, when you had to learn all these poems that you were like, all of these things are important. They're important parts of your development. They're important to your development.
Yeah.
They're necessary.
Social skills. I mean, social skills, teaching us how. I mean, we had to dress up. Kids had. I mean, when we went to the symphony, we had to wear evening attire.
Mm-hmm.
When we went to the opera, we had to dress up. Getting kids to get out of the normal jeans and shirts to present themselves, being able to talk to adults and say please and thank you. All of these things I learned in grammar school. I did. My parents were teaching me that as well, but a lot of the life skills I learned in school.
Well, you know what? Put them to, you employed them. You employed them there. All the things your parents taught you, they were reinforced and they were employed there. This is, when you learn how to get along with people, having to work in groups. And then when you need special help, asking for it and knowing how to get along with your teacher and knowing how to get along with your fellow classmates. All of that is important. All of those things are important. More important than we know. But you have people like Elon Musk. You have Jeff Bezos, who said that pretty soon visiting Earth is going to be like visiting Yellowstone Park. Elon Musk said something to the same effect that these folks don't even think they're going to be people here. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? This is kind of crazy and sick. So that's another story for another day. But I'm going to let you go, and I want to thank you for being with us today. I knew you'd be great. And everybody knew you'd be great too. Love you so much. Everybody, I love you.
Have a great day.
All right. Love y'all. Love you, love you, love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow. Thank you, Coach May, for a great show. All right, everybody. Love you.